Hi, I thought I'd pop by and say hello, just on the off chance that you might be watching or about to watch. It's been a very strange time for me. I've been going on this kind of weight loss journey, and because of that, none of my clothes that I currently have fit me. And so everything is just, it's just really, really big. And so I decided that I was going to kind of cull my wardrobe and do a just kind of reassess my clothes situation. I don't want to buy anything new because I'm still losing weight, but I need to sort out my wardrobe, so that's what I'm doing. So today the other day I took all of my large clothes out from my trousers, my pants cupboard and shelves, and I put them into two piles. One pile is for reselling and one pile is for sort of charity or not good enough to resell. Not the charity stuff, but I said, well, three piles actually. Selling, not good enough, and charity. So today I took my stuff, which can really just be shredded and used again and recycled, because there are either holes or rips or they're not very good quality clothes and I've worn them to death, whatever. And I took them to the drop-off point today and got rid of them, and it was a really, really weird feeling. I just thought to myself, gosh, that's so cathartic. It's almost like I'm kind of giving part of myself away and starting again. And so I went to put on another pair of trousers and they were way too big. In fact, I was just in the garden kind of chasing the dog because he was just really annoying me, trying to get my poo bags when I was clearing up his poo. And my trousers fell down, so that would teach me, I suppose. But anyway, we kind of go through different phases and stages in our lives, don't we? And it's hard to know when is a good time to let go and when is a good time to sort of start afresh. There are lots of decisions I need to make in the next couple of weeks, and they're quite big ones, and they're not always easy. And especially when they involve people that you really care about. And I do really care about some of the people that I've got to talk to about various things, and it's really, really hard to, first of all, get the courage to do it, to face up to it, and also to make changes, big changes. But, survival is important, and so I'm just going to have to do that. How do you manage to face up to your big major decisions, especially when it affects people that you really care about? I'm not saying I'm going to hurt anybody or I'm going to do anything bad. It's just that I need to make changes, and it's important that I do. Otherwise, it's just going to be really detrimental to me. And if there's no me, then what do we have really at the end of the day? So I was just thinking about those sorts of big questions and ideas, and also the fact that I'm going to be volunteering again on the program, which is to do with bereavement and death and loss. And this will be my third year that I've done that particular course, and the first year I did it as a participant, and last year I did it as a kind of helper and assistant, and this year I'll be doing the same. And I find it very, very beneficial, because when we go through bereavement and loss, it takes a while, doesn't it, if you've been through it, and I'm sure many of you have, it takes a long time for our body and our mind and our spirit, I suppose, to come to terms with those things. Now, loss isn't just about death. Loss could be about losing weight and losing that person that you were, or becoming a new person. And actually, loss can also be about the loss or the lack of having something, maybe the lack of a life that I perhaps thought I should have, or that perhaps you thought you should have for various reasons. Loss can be losing your car keys. It can be divorce. It can be losing your favourite book, or a love letter from a loved one, or something. It could be anything. And I honestly do think that all of those things in our lives as we get older, they kind of build up, they kind of ratchet up against each other, and they form this kind of solid, sort of almost solid weight of loss. And when you lose somebody that you love through bereavement, through death, it could also be through the death of their mind. They could have Alzheimer's or early onset Alzheimer's, or sort of severely life debilitating diseases, or what have you, or illnesses. and that person that you once loved is no longer there. It's very, very hard. And then the actual finite thing of them not being there at all, and you not being able to hold their hand, even if they have turned into an unrecognisable loved one or person that you cared about before. It's really, really tough. And coming to terms with that takes a long time. Now, many of you will know, my best friend Pandora died in 2019. We knew she was terminally ill. She had breast cancer, like so many of us do, or have. I don't, but so many of you have, and people have. And it's just such an unkind disease because it takes people way too young often. And Pandora, from my reckoning, was way too young. She was in her 50s, late 50s, and she'd known about her illness for about 4 years, and she battled it at the end. She battled it from the beginning, but she found it hard to come to terms with it. And she kept telling everybody that she was getting better. But obviously, when she was diagnosed, she was stage 4, so there was no way that she was going to get better. Maybe she was feeling better because she mentally was coming to terms with the idea that she was actually going to die. But it was just the most awful, horrific, horrible thing. And it was so tragic, and it was so horrendous for her 2 boys that she left behind, and all the people that she loved, her family and her really dear friends. And she was a people collector, so she had this amazing ability of bringing her various groups of friends from different parts of her life together. And I really miss that, and I really miss the fact that she was the glue that kind of held everyone together, because since she died, even though I still keep in contact with a few people, we just don't see each other the way that we used to. She used to just arrange everything. And I really miss that. But most of all, I really miss her. I really miss her presence. I really miss her zaniness and her sense of humour, her kindness and her warmth and her love. I really, really miss it. And there are many days where I just think to myself, oh, Pandy would have really loved this, or Pandora would have really loved that. And she died in 2019, so it's going to be 6 years in the autumn when she would have died. And I miss her today just as much as I missed her at the very beginning when she died. And I think that's so true of so many people. On my bereavement course that I've been doing, people come to it because they're still grieving the loss of a loved one. And that loved one could have been somebody who passed away 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. There are people who come to the course who have lost a sibling, say, when they were young, when they were like 10 or 12, something like that. And the only reason that it's come to the surface, that they've buried it underneath their skin and it's come to the surface, say that could have been 50 years ago, is because their cat died or their dog died or something else happened. They could have experienced maybe the death of somebody that wasn't even related to them, but it's brought back the memories of that tragic loss of losing somebody when you were a child. So I think it has a very strange kind of chemistry, bereavement. It does change and morph, and it comes back and it goes, and it comes back and it goes. And I think that that's just the way it is, and perhaps that's the way it's always going to be. But I do find it quite hard sometimes to come to terms with. And the other thing which is really difficult if we're talking about loss, which I am now, and bereavement, when you're actually relieved that that person has died, even if they are a massively significant other, like an alcoholic husband, for instance, who mistreated you, but you still love them somehow, or but the relief is that they're no longer there to kind of prey on you and treat you badly. Or it could be, in my case, for instance, my mother, who was we had a very difficult relationship, and it was really, for me, it was very challenging. And I was so relieved that, that she just, I'm quite relieved that she's not around, but I do miss her. So it's a very strange thing, of mixed bag of emotions. Sometimes I wish I could just phone her up and say, Mum, guess what, blah, 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 or do you think I should do this, or how are you, what are you up to? But actually, on the kind of balance, the general balance of it, I'm relieved. And that's a very, very strange emotion, to be relieved that your mother is no longer with you, because I found her incredibly destructive towards my general kind of emotional and psychological health. So but then that, like I said, that part of me still misses her as well. It's really, really odd. And Mum died, I don't know, 2022, and so we've had 3 Christmases without her now, and we did miss her at Christmas because she was a bit bonkers, but overall it is a relief. So you come across these very strange kind of dichotomies of emotions when it comes to bereavement. And then there are going to be the deaths, I suppose, and the losses in your life, which you're never going to get back, which are just so difficult and so hard to come to terms with. In my case, divorce, which I wanted, I initiated, and I'm in a way, I'm relieved that that my life is so different now and so much healthier and so much better. But at the same time, there's that loss of what I wish we had, and perhaps the loss of the lack, that feeling, that bereavement of the loss of a relationship that really could have been so much better had we both perhaps put more time into it, or tried harder, or got more connected somehow, or perhaps had grown together rather than apart over the decades that we were together. And I feel really sad for that, and I don't blame my ex-husband. There's no blame game. I just find it very, very difficult sometimes to come to terms with the fact that I'd always wanted all of my children to be together, and grandchildren or whatever we had, in a lovely family home, and that was my kind of dream, and that's just not going to happen because my husband and I are divorced, and so that's very difficult to kind of come to terms with as well. So there are all sorts of things, aren't there? There's, the family home goes, the loss of a pet, the loss of a beloved cat or a dog or a budgerigar or whatever it might be, a lizard. There's the loss of your health, there's the loss of mobility, there's the loss of all sorts of things in life which can compound on top of each other and actually make getting through the day sometimes very difficult for people. And I'm going to focus my next book on grief and loss. And it's going to be all sorts of grief and loss. It's going to be loss with a positive flip side to it too. So it could be the loss of weight, for instance, as in my case, and the feeling of rejuvenation and kind of restarting and gearing up your life. But it could also be the loss of, as I said, the dream that you had with your loved one, and perhaps they died, or you're divorced, or they've left you, or whatever it might be. Or they could have just disappeared off the face of the earth. Who knows? But there are so many different types of loss and grief in life. And we can grieve for so many things. And everybody comes to the table with a different kind of emotional toolbox, I suppose. Different experiences, don't we? We all have different experiences. We've all been raised in very different ways. Okay, there might be similarities. We may have all gone to the same school and sat in the same classroom with the same teacher and listened to the same lesson, but we will take things from that lesson or from that teacher in a completely different context to each other. Everybody sees things and relates to things in a very different way. And I really do believe that because of our differences and our similarities, it's really difficult and almost virtually impossible actually to judge people. I used to be very judgmental. I used to be quite bad and critical when I was young. And I would just dismiss people, but that if I thought that they weren't trying hard enough or being kind enough or whatever it was in my eyes. And now I just think, well, actually, there's no reason I have to be friends with that person or do whatever with that person or have any interaction with that person. But actually that person has had a completely different life and been raised completely differently to me, and has had a whole set of emotional experiences and throughout their life which they carry with them. And you cannot judge somebody for being the way they are. I do remember something very wise that my husband said to me. Now, he was a political refugee, from Iran, and he and his family fled the revolution in 1979. And we lived in New York in the 90s. And one day, I think it was like Memorial Day or one of the holidays, we had our son at that time, and he was only about 2.5 or 3, something like that. And we had a family day together, and we thought we would take him to the cinema. So we took him to the cinema, and we went to see, I remember it, is it Cats and Dogs, the movie? Maybe he was about 4, I can't remember, but it was in the kind of mid to late 90s. Well, it must have been the late 90s because he was born in 1997. So it was the late 90s. Anyway, we went to the cinema, and we were quite late, and we were rushing to get to this movie, and we booked the tickets, and we got there, and when we went into the movie theatre, it was absolutely packed. It was absolutely bursting at the seams. And I'm just me, nice person, I think, anyway, I hope, non-judgmental, nice person. So we went into the movie theatre, and the film hadn't started yet, and there was a row of seats, and there were 3 seats, but they were split up in between another group of people. There were a couple, I think it was a mother and daughter, that were sitting in 2 seats, and on one side was 1 seat, and on the other side next to them was 2 seats. So I said very nicely, "Excuse me, but would you mind moving up a seat so that my family can sit together, the 3 of us could sit together?" And the woman said, "No, I'm not doing that." And I looked at her, and I was really surprised. And I said, "Really?" I said, "We very rarely come out. This is my son's kind of treat, and I'm here with my husband, and it would be really kind of you if you would just move up 1 seat, shuffle along 1 spot basically, so that we can sit and watch the movie, the 3 of us together with our son." And they said, "No, you should have got here earlier." And I sat down because the film was about to start, so I sat down in 1 seat, the 2 women were in between me, and then my husband and my son sat down next to them. And I was so upset. I thought, how could anybody do that? What on earth are they thinking, that they don't have the kindness in their hearts to let mum and dad and their little son sit together to watch a movie together? Why would you do that? I would be the kind of person who, if I saw there was a seat next to me and my friend or my mum or whoever it was she was sitting with, and 2 seats empty next to me, I would offer to move up so that they could all sit together. But they were blatantly refusing to do that. Now, I failed to tell you something important about those 2 women. They were dressed beautifully, impeccably, and they were both African American. And I, being naive, treat everybody with the same amount of respect and cordiality and kindness. I do that as a matter of course. That's the way I've been brought up. And my ex-husband, who was in the revolution and was far more aware of kind of like, not diversity, but the way that people could behave towards each other and the cruelty that people inflicted on each other. And anyway, to cut a long story short, after about 5 minutes of the film beginning, the fire alarm went off in the cinema and everybody had to evacuate. It was really weird. Everyone evacuated when we all left, and we went outside into the foyer, and we went out, and then we had to evacuate the building. And I said to my ex-husband, I was really upset about that. I said, that really upset me that those ladies didn't move up. They seemed so nice. Why didn't they do that? And he said, don't expect that they've been treated well throughout their life in this country. Don't expect that they've had the same privileges that you've had. And don't expect, and you don't know what they've been through. You have no idea what they've been through and what they've suffered in their life. And they probably feel that they have every right to talk to us like that. And just leave it, just forget about it, because they have probably experienced really awful stuff that we know nothing about. So just let it go. And I thought, you know, that's actually really wise, because he's right. He was absolutely right. I don't know what they've experienced in their life living in America, living in New York as two black women who, I mean, they were actually really like nice looking, well presented women. It was just that they refused to move for me. And I have learnt as I've grown older that actually they had every right not to move for me. Why would they? I mean, my kind heart would say, yeah, like I said, if that was me, I'd get up and move anyway, automatically, because I just, whoever those people were, wherever they were from, whatever. And I really took on board what my ex-husband said to me, because I know where he has been and where his family have come from and what they've gone through and what they've suffered through the regime and through the revolution. So I understand that actually in my naivety, I shouldn't have been upset. I should have been more empathic, because I should have understood before I even went there really that they had probably been through some really awful stuff and been really badly treated, or historically badly treated, which they carry with them. And that's the whole point, isn't it, really? Anyway, another, like, fast forward, everybody was allowed back in the cinema. We went into another movie theatre in the movie complex, and we all sat together and watched the movie. But it was really quite a sort of eye-opener, really. And I remember thinking, you know, at the time, America is supposed to be the land of the free, but there was so much hostility under the surface, from every creed and colour and whatever against the other, that I found it quite complex and quite difficult to get my head around. Anyway, there we go. I mean, things have probably only got worse, haven't they, in the past, almost 3 decades since that happened. All globally, all over the world, things have become a lot more polarized. But I remember that very vividly. And I remember when, as I was just saying about loss and bereavement and how we all bring a different emotional toolbox to the table. That was their toolbox. That was their sewing kit, or their toolbox, or whatever you want to call it. Their box of ingredients, emotional ingredients. And now I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't question somebody if they said no to me like that. I would kind of hope that I would get it now. And I would just, you know, let it go, I think. But yeah, anyway, so I just thought I'd pop by to say hello, and I just wondered what you were up to, and what you're going to be doing for the rest of your day. I've already been for a lovely walk this morning. I've hopefully sorted out my taxes now. They sort of came back to haunt me in the last day or two, so I've kind of given all the last bits of information to my accountant for that, so hopefully that's all sorted. And so as far as I'm concerned, it's onwards and upwards from here on, and I hope that I can make some kind of resolutions to get other things organised in my life, things that I don't like facing, things that I don't like doing. And now, as I promised myself I would do after my accountancy stuff was sorted, I will start my next book. And as I said, my next book is going to be about grief and loss. But like I said, there are going to be flip sides to loss too. Losing weight, for instance, getting better from perhaps a terrible illness, maybe even losing your health in a way that has brought back a bounce in your step because you've rejuvenated yourself and you've become better, or you've come through what was perhaps a diagnosis which was terrible, and you've got better and you've come out of that. For instance, with me, with my rheumatoid arthritis, I had that terrible diagnosis in 2014 when I could not move, couldn't walk, couldn't hold a coffee cup, couldn't do anything. And all of a sudden, since I got divorced in 2020 and lockdown, it's actually got an awful lot better. And hopefully losing my weight, that's another loss, will make my rheumatoid arthritis go away completely. But I doubt it, because my wrists are still really sore. But I'm getting there. So on that positive up note, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask me, or anything that they'd like to request for me to do? That's obviously a nice thing to do. Or maybe you'd like me to read some poetry and something from a book tomorrow. I thought that I might do that. I was thinking of reading some Oscar Wilde, maybe one of his short stories, or perhaps The Velveteen Rabbit, if anybody likes The Velveteen Rabbit and they'd like to have a story read to them. Maybe they can sit down and close their eyes and take a deep breath and put your feet up with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or something and listen to me read. Perhaps you might quite like that. Anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you now, but I shall look forward to seeing you soon, and I hope you have a fantastic, fantastic day. Lots and lots and lots of love. Bye bye.